Beyond that, it's who else has played themselves into a position to get into the college football playoff. Means we got to talk about Colorado. That's what that means, man. I could see a path where Colorado ends up with 10 wins, wins the Big 12 championship over an undefeated BYU. Thanks to Kansas knocking off Iowa State today, Colorado is in the number 2 spot behind BYU in the race to get into the Big 12 championship. Now, a game that I thought was not going to test them next week will absolutely test them next week because it's Kansas, right? It's one of those enemy of my enemy is my friend deals with Texas Tech last week too. Texas Tech knocks up Iowa State. They knocked off Texas Tech today on the road. Kansas feels like the kind of program where they can figure out how to reel off 3 in a row because 3 in a row gets them to 6-6, right? They also have enough athletes on both sides of the ball to give Colorado all sorts of problems. To that matter, so did Texas Tech. Colorado's playing its best football so far this season. I think if you can beat that Kansas team, you get Utah, then you get the Kansas team, then you get Oklahoma State. It's done, right? It's done. We get to talk about them being in the Big 12 championship. They win the Big 12 championship. Let's assume that you get Miami and SMU into the ACC title game, as it would be right now, because Miami has a tiebreaker against Clemson because they beat Louisville and Louisville beat Clemson. Would you be inclined to make, say, Southern Methodist or Miami the number 3 seed and Colorado the number 4 seed, or would you flip it? And I think that's going to be styles and what resumes say. Again, SMU has the tremendous advantage here because BYU is the only team to beat them. So if Colorado beats BYU, that doesn't seem so cool anymore, right? No, but if SMU beats Miami, does that make that a cooler thing? I think if you're SMU, you really want BYU to win the Big 12 championship. That's what you want. So that you can win the ACC championship, and then it'll be what it is, right? It'll be SMU at 4, BYU at 3. But even then, we're talking about the champion in the SEC, which is who could say, right? I could say Texas, I could say A&M, I could say Bama, I could say Ole Miss. You know, I could keep going. Georgia, I could say anybody at this point. It's what it feels like. Tennessee, could say Tennessee. Are they all just going to be playing for second fiddle here? Because it feels like Oregon and Ohio State at right now are 2 best programs in college football. Who would you rather see play in the college football playoff? It's not a discussion that many pure college football fans want to have, but I'm going to tell you something. If it comes down to Colorado versus not Ohio State, not Tennessee, not Blue Blood, they're getting in the playoff. And not only getting in the playoff, they're going to get a nice seat at the table. Because I could seriously see them perhaps making the Big 12 championship game with 10 wins, losing a close game to BYU, and being one of those at-large teams. Imagine Colorado, Lord help me, going to Notre Dame, right? Colorado going to Beaver Stadium. Or imagine Colorado getting to host one of those programs. That would be awesome television. It'd be outstanding because Prime is going to help sell those tickets. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be really good. They could end up a 3 seed. They could end up the 4 seed, but I think you get the next 3 wins, you're getting into the playoff if you're Colorado, and that is the way in which we should start thinking about that program because they have changed the calculus on what their season is going to be by virtue of being 7-2. 7-2. The defense played lights out against Texas Tech today, right? 3 takeaways, I believe 6 sacks, right? I want to say it's 10 tackles for loss. Outstanding from them. And then Travis Hunter continues to be the most spectacular player that the sport has seen in quite some time. We've never seen anybody do what Travis Hunter is doing, playing this amount of snaps, making it happen, being a guy that needs to make plays on both sides of the ball for you to win, and then on a team that wins football games. That's pretty outstanding stuff, man. That's gorgeous. Oregon, of course, took care of Maryland. In case you didn't see that particular score, it was 39-18. Tennessee took care of Mississippi State, 33-14. Arizona State comes back to beat Central Florida. They were down 17-7 without Cam Skattebo. They've been having a great year. Like, that is another team that you just got to wait and watch. They're 7-2, like Colorado. They're 7-2. You know, it's been fun watching Kenny Dillingham's program come back from what was a devastating year last year. And that's one of the other things that I think we can take from this. It has never been easier to change your fortunes in college football than it is right now. I mean, we've got a glimpse of this 2022 with Texas Christian, right? New head coach, turn over the roster, and all of a sudden you go on a tear. You go undefeated in the regular season. You make the Big 12 championship. You lose it, but you are still one of the 4 best teams in college football, so they put you in the playoff. And then you pull off the win against Michigan. You get to the national championship game. Washington was a good football team, became a great football team. They make the national championship game last year because Kalen DeBoer came in, rehabilitated Michael Penix Jr., gave him a little bit more to play with, and like guys like Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan, and they went to work, right? This year, it's Indiana. Kurt Signetti, who knows how to build a roster, who went and got prioritized guys that have produced in the sport. A bunch of guys from James Madison, from where he was winning last year, gets Curtis Work, who's an all-MAC quarterback, and they just put together a program on both sides of the ball, looks balanced, and can take on anybody in the Big Ten that they want to take on. We are seeing a historic season from that program because of the portal, because of name, image, and likeness, and because of the college football playoff, and because of conference realignment. Nobody knows nothing about their new members, and we're all figuring out the unintended consequences of this. One of them being, if you got to travel more than 2 time zones, you might lose. You're probably going to lose. Ask Iowa about traveling to UCLA after putting up numbers earlier this year. UCLA gets you to come out there over 2 time zones, all of a sudden you forget how to play football. That's how it feels, right? Indiana, one of those teams that was able to go over 2 time zones and get the win. They also got a little bit more time to prepare. They played a Friday game against an FCS opponent, then they went to UCLA, and then they beat UCLA. You're also getting to see teams like Vanderbilt, who was a top 25 program until today. I don't know that they're going to be in this thing after taking a 21 point to South Carolina. They turn over the roster. They invest in name, image, and likeness. It is reaching the point in college football where if you want to be good, all you got to have is some money to start and a coach that knows what to do with it. If you got those 2 things, you can go make this thing happen. And you can turn over the roster as often as you would like year to year. That's kind of cool. I get that it makes it really difficult for folks to follow, but it is making the games themselves much more volatile and much more fun. Now, the thing that I would say we're going to caution against, and I really do want you to listen when I say this. I can't tell you who the 5 guys are going to start for Kansas basketball are. I know Hunter Dickinson. I can't tell you about who none of them Smurfs were at North Carolina. I can't. One of the smallest North Carolina basketball lineups I've ever seen in my life. From year to year, I can't tell you who's at Baylor, and I can't tell you who is at Kentucky. Can't tell you who's at Arkansas, because them dudes be changing up on the regular. That part of the sport is slowly becoming a part of college football. And that is where folks like myself are proving utility, right? I'm going to know where players are and where they were last year. And you're going to hear more of it in the broadcast when folks are going, that person was at USC last year or was at Mississippi 2 years ago. Here's what he was doing before that. And those guys are going to create new stories for you. But it is also going to put an even bigger spotlight on who the head coach is. Because the head coach is the fixed point in college football. You know where Ryan Day is. You know where James Franklin is. You know where Kalen DeBoer is. You know where Steve Sarkisian is. You know where Kirby Smart is going to be, right? As long as those things are still fixed points for the most part, we're going to be okay. Dan Lanning, Oregon, great example there. That's the issue that we're going to have to overcome. And I just don't see a good fix to that because we do want players to be able to transfer as much as coaches get to be hired and fired. And we do want players to benefit from name, image, and likeness. I think with the scholarship limit that's going to be enforced by the conferences, they're going to stick to 85, for instance, in the SEC, allowing for 20 walk-ons, which I think is very cool because we all love walk-ons as a culture in our sport. I think what we're going to see is once we finally get to a way where the universities themselves pay these dues like employees, it's going to be harder to move on or move off. Like the contracts might be binding. They might have nothing to do with going to school. Who knows, right? We're still working that part out. But in as far as what the sport is offering us right now, I don't know that we've had this much fun in a very long time. Like the SEC is a free-for-all. I can't remember the last time the SEC was a free-for-all. In November, my guys, in November. We got 5-6 teams in a 16-team league that could all win the SEC championship. We could end up with not Alabama and Georgia in an SEC championship. We could end up with not Alabama, Georgia, or LSU in an SEC championship. Do you realize that no new member to the SEC has won the SEC championship since 1990? That means South Carolina ain't won it, A&M ain't won it, Missouri ain't won it, Ole Miss ain't won it, Georgia's won it, Oklahoma ain't won it, and Oklahoma ain't going to win it. They lost to Missouri earlier tonight. My point here is we want to see this level of volatility. We do. We want to see Vanderbilt upset the number one team in the country. You know, it's so much more fun. And now that we got a 12-team tournament at the end, it can happen without the repercussions that it used to have, right? Like we're talking about two teams that were playing to get into the college football playoff with 2 losses. Used to be 1 loss. Makes it real damn hard for people to justify you getting into some national championship conversation. Now 2 losses, you're fine, as long as you play in one of these Power 4 conferences. And that might be the last thing to underscore there. If you are one of these programs that find yourself fortunate enough to be in the Big Ten, the ACC, the SEC, or the Big 12, you are in high cotton. Because all you need is a good coach and a little bit of money to turn it all around. That's it. Everybody has an opportunity to compete as long as they're in one of those conferences. Is that always going to be the case? Not sure, right? We'll see what the new Pac-12 allows. But like teams like Wazoo, they're staring at this thing going, how do we get into this? Because Wazoo, I think, should be treated like a group of 5 school, but they can't be. A, they're members of the Pac-12. B, they don't play for a conference championship, and we don't think of them like we think of Notre Dame. So if we thought about Wazoo the way we thought about Notre Dame, maybe they get into this thing. But they get a win later tonight. They're a 1-loss team that's looking at this going, how is it that we are not in the college football playoff with these other 2-loss teams? Because you don't play in the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, or the Big 12. Had it been up to me, I'd say you got stomped out by Boise State. That would be my thing to say to Wazoo. Your best win is still just Washington, and Washington's not no good. You can't get beat down by Boise State. One of the reasons we talk about Boise State is because it was a last play for Oregon that got them the win against Boise State, making us believe that Boise State's a good football team. Wazoo getting destroyed by Ashton Jeanty and them, like the famous tape of Ashton Jeanty running against 8 and 9-man boxes and picking up 9 yards, 10 yards per carry, it came against Wazoo. That's the problem that Wazoo's going to run into. There's no getting around that part. So they're going to need some other people to lose football games for them to get into the playoff, but they can still get into this thing. Especially as, Pittsburgh took a second loss. Lost to Virginia on the way out here, right? I think the last part of this that we're going to need to discuss before we do the live show tomorrow night, Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is whether or not the playoff needs to expand to 16 teams. I realize that we're kind of caught in the middle of this because I want 16 teams and a lot of the other people just wanted 6, and now we all got 12. So I think, it's a nice number. But depending on how this goes the rest of the way and how it goes to 2025, I would not be shocked to find out that it expands, not because we need more teams from the outside of the Power 4, but because the SEC and the Big Ten are showing us they have between 4 and 6 teams that can get into the playoff. And we would like to see it, right? Think about if you could put the top 6 teams in the SEC into the playoff right now. Matter of fact, let's just take a look. Let's take a look at who the top 6 teams in the SEC would be. We're talking about Texas, Georgia, A&M, Tennessee, LSU. Yeah, man. Ole Miss. Bama, right there, right? That's 7. You go to the Big Ten, maybe not that many. You're talking about Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State. Yeah. And that's what it is, right? So if you could guarantee you're getting 4 spots apiece, and then you get 2 at-larges, you make room for Notre Dame, you make room for your G5, yeah, I can see 16 teams. But it wouldn't be cut up the way that I want it cut up. I want it cut up in a way that conference championships matter, and I get that there's a whole bunch of people that don't like conference championship games, and I'm going, oh, you hate football. How bad for you? You're a football fan who hates watching more football. Explain that to me. Explain to me how less inventory is good for you as a football fan. RG, it's about the kids. You don't give a damn about none of them kids, dog. You don't know none of them. That ain't your boy. And if that boy want to play football, why you stopping him? It's the same argument about, hey, they be trying to convince y'all to take on more than one job because it makes you more reputable. No, you take on more than one job because you like working. I like to work. I like to do this show. I don't like to sit on my hands. I like to go get stuff done. At one point or another, if you're getting paid enough, the money becomes a way of keeping score. It's about getting paid enough to do what you think you got to do. That's why dudes get paid like they do. And if you Travis Hunter, you getting paid like you got 2 jobs. That's how that goes. right? We on this earth for a good time, not a long time. And there's only so much cost-benefit analysis that I'm willing to do on this stuff. If the dudes want to go play 16, 17 games in a year, let them. Some of y'all have never been a part of Texas high school football playoffs, and it shows. Realize that if you don't get the bye this year, you're playing 16 games. You're playing basically an NFL regular season, okay? We've already done that. If we expand the bracket and we remove conference championships, cool, you keep the net zero of games played. But I don't think that's ridiculous. I don't think that's stupid because I like playing for championships. I like playing for belts. I like hanging them. That plaque back there says 100,000 subscribers means the world to me. It took so many other people fewer amount of time to get to 100,000 subscribers. They probably got to 1 million in the same amount of time. But I like having my championship. I love my championship. I like the opportunity to play for championships. It gives my season a little bit more meaning than what some suits in a boardroom in the Gaylord, Texas are going to tell me about what my football season is when they ain't been there. I love that. I don't ever want to see conference championship games go away. I like playing for belts. I like being able to look at my peers and say, I beat you. And I got the banner over here to prove it. Yeah, but you win no national championship. Yeah, but neither did you, but I beat you. I whooped your ass. And that's also college football. We are regional. It don't in the Pac-12, it didn't much matter what the SEC was doing because the Pac-12, you just need to beat that dude next to you, right? We all regional about this. It is the neighbor that you need to beat down. It ain't the dude across town. It's the dude you got to see every day. It's why I tell y'all, when you take these beatings on rival weeks, you got to show up to church tomorrow wearing your threads and let everybody get their licks in because that's what they're going to do, right? Speaking of which, get your licks in on Oklahoma, Missouri. I'm sure, I didn't check the chat, but I'm sure y'all getting them in there. They blew a lead. They lost. Okay. 5-5. Great. LSU, Bama next. I hope it's fun for you. I hope it's fun for you. All right. I think that is going to do it for tonight's live episode of the number one college football show. We will be back here on Sunday with reactions to the AP and top 25. Might do a little bit of my top 25 here a little bit later on, but I still got lots of work to do on that because, well, Georgia lost, Miami lost, Indiana narrowly won, Ole Miss has got to move up, got to figure out what to do with Missouri and Vanderbilt, and oh, by the way, Colorado is pretty good. So I got some work to do. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Deuces.